origination of this farm, Jonabell, really dates back into the mid-1770s. It was an Abraham Bowman with his brothers would come over in the early days and were frontiersmen, came to central Kentucky, was always looking around, prospecting, looking for land. He then served in the Revolutionary War where he came out as a colonel, so we now have a Colonel Bowman. And as a result for his meritorious work in the war, he was granted some 7,500 acres in central Kentucky. So with that and his brothers and family, they moved to Kentucky, and with some additional purchases is now what is now Jonabell, Mill Ridge, and of course Keeneland. His wife, Sarah, had a cousin, Meriwether Lewis, of the famed Lewis and Clark expedition, and a couple of the Bowman's sons actually accompanied him on parts of that trip. So we have a lot of historical figures early roaming around here, and Colonel Bowman actually during his explorations around Kentucky was a good friend of Daniel Boone. So they all were looking in the same direction and exploring parts of Kentucky. So that was very interesting, and as a result there are a couple of very old antebellum homes that he built on the farm. One was in early 1800s where my parents lived, and down the road about a mile was another one that was built in 1815. And there's also a cabin built over on that property that was circa 1781. It might be one of the oldest log houses in Kentucky. So, and after the land passed from Colonel Bowman, a very interesting gentleman from Canada, Ed Corrigan, took over and actually had a Derby winner in 1890 called Riley. And he was one of the original owners and founders of Hawthorne Racetrack in Chicago. And he's the one responsible for having built the tower that's the farm is so notable for in 1904. And it's all hand-chipped limestone with every few courses of slate to keep it very level as they went up, and it's been kind of a centerpiece of the farm. Of course, Mom and Dad in 1954 really founded Jonabell Farm here, and in 2001, as you know, we sold the property to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, and here we are in 2021. You know, when Mom and Dad first moved out here, this was kind of a rundown old kind of a crop farm really, with tobacco, and a lot of rocks were sticking out. And Dad always would take all the muck every winter and spread it out over the fields and build up the humus in the ground to develop that organic matter. And you know, again, it's all back to nature, staying close to the land. And I would say that philosophy is carried right through with Sheikh Mohammed. I've said this many times before, there's no one better than what the Maktoum families have been as stewards of the land. They spare no expense in taking care of it. They believe in it. They know your horses are only as good as what they eat and grow on. And so I'd say that would be the biggest factor throughout the life and years of here at Jonabell, is that I do think the land was looked after and tried to build upon. Well, as you might imagine, being a horse farm, we did have a couple of high-profile visitors, primarily Her Majesty, the Queen, came over early during the Jonabell days when there was a filly in Europe called Forest Flower, owned and bred by Paul Mellon, sired by our little Green Forest over here, that had created quite a stir. And on one of her trips over here, she wanted to see Green Forest, and so that was pretty special, as you can imagine. Maybe not so much on the horse front, but maybe certainly recognizable. Elizabeth Taylor was here for a brunch one day, and even at a young age, I can remember, I've never seen eyes more blue than her, matched a fairly large sapphire, as I can remember, and how tiny she was. Really a small person, but she was very delightful and was here for the races, and that was kind of fun too. So, but sort of an interesting family story back in the day. I had this yearling that got accepted to the Saratoga Select Sale, and I'm thinking maybe I'll retire in 1 or 2 years after this big score. So we go up to Saratoga, and she's a bit of a country bumpkin, and the public kind of felt that way as well. So she's in the ring, and I said, well, I better put a $25,000 reserve on her just to get this money flowing, and they can tell there's no bids anywhere for her. And so Mom leans over to Dad and says, I thought you told me this was a very good filly. He said, well, she's fine. She's just not a sales filly, and she's, you know, she'll be she'll be relaxed. She goes, well, put a bid in there for me. Put $1,000, sold $26,000. Now Mom's in the horse racing business. Strange thing, this filly wins the Fairgrounds Oaks. She places in the Kentucky Oaks, and my sister Benny and Nunu take over her breeding career, and they send a little yearling filly into the Fasig-Tipton Summer Sale by summing, $150,000 knocked down. I said, that didn't really sound like a sale. I look up and there's Dad with a receipt, and I said, man, you know, we probably need to sell that one, but he said, no, she's much better than this. She turns out running second in the Alcibiades. She won the goldenrod, and now all of a sudden we're off to the Breeders' Cup. So Mom and Dad said, okay, everybody, we're going to the Breeders' Cup. We get out there. They're just running the sprint race. We're in the next race. You know, here we are, almost missed our own race. We get down to the paddock. Funny enough, the race goes off, and they set just wicked fractions. In fact, the first 6 furlongs were as fast in the sprint race as they were in this 2-year-old filly race. And Epitome is so far in the back that my mother yells out, "Whose idea was it to put this filly in this race anyways? This is a total embarrassment." And as they turn for home, she's dead last, and here comes Pat Day. He just sits along, cuts the corner, comes up the rail, comes flying at the end, and it's just a photo finish. And we were too scared to go down to the winner's circle because, you know, what are we doing down there? And all of a sudden they flash up her number, and here it is, champion 2-year-old Epitome. So then we bring her back to the farm and breed her in just a full cycle. She ends up selling $2 million horse in Essence of Dubai that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed purchased. Won the UAE Derby, came over here, won major stakes, and one of those stories where 1 or 2 bids made a difference in the whole chart of Jonabell during those days. As I've said many times, this farm's got great bones to it, just the way it's laid out, the rolling hills to it, and of course the finishing touches that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed has been able to put upon it with the barns and the facilities that we've been blessed with really makes it a hard place to ever want to leave, and it's just yeah, it's a sanctuary. I mean, you know every part of it. You look at trees that you used to climb as a young kid. You look at the creek. Yeah, we used to swim down there, and you have great memories that are always flashing through your mind. And then you look up and you see some pretty significant horses that have come down the pike. And you know, we raised Damascus here, for instance, and you know, we spoke about Epitome a little earlier, and some nice, great stallions. And each one sort of takes you through a period of time. And it's not just memories, and now you're very excited with the present time. We have Maxville that was foaled here on the farm. Essential Quality was foaled here at Jonabell. And so the beat continues, and I think it's just very nice to sort of think that this farm really has raised some very meaningful racehorses. And just the environment itself is, you know, different strokes for different folks, but farm life's for me.